You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, the home of Night Dreams Talk Radio, with Gary Anderson, syndicated worldwide. Paranormal Talk Radio, like you remember.
I got my mind set on you. I got my mind set on you. I got my mind set on you. Got my mind set on you. But it's gonna take money. A whole lot of spending money. It's gonna take plenty of money to do it right, child. It's gonna take time. And time to do it right, child. I got my mind set on you. 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 And this time I know it's real. The feeling that I feel. My mind to it. I know that I really can do it. I got my mind set on you. Set on you. I got my mind set on you. Set on you. But it's gonna take money. Whole lot of spending money. It's gonna take plenty of money. Right, child. It's gonna take time, whole lot of precious time. It's gonna take patience and time to do it, 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 to do it.
Who's friends with all the night dreamers talking to you at night? Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not inside. Bigfoot's on his tail, flying UFOs, that's right. Gary's talk show radio, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday nights. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Dreamers talk show will fix your despair. If you want to talk conspiracies, Night Dreamers is for you. Top secret case, alien space, it's Gary with the news. Tune in on the radio, don't let Big Brother know. They're listening to everything, even Gary's late night show. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Show Dreamers talk show will fix your despair, because Gary's talking to you at night.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on Night Dreams with Gary Anderson do not necessarily reflect those of the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, its hosts, staff, or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Listener discretion is advised. When darkness falls and questions echo through the night, we go beyond the headlines into UFOs, Bigfoot, Earth changes, time travel, and even Hollywood's hidden truths. This isn't just talk. It's the unknown unleashed. This is Night Dreams Talk Radio, where mysteries live and the strange is real. And now, the legend himself, Gary Anderson.
Well, it's another Thursday, and I can tell you what, it's beautiful down here in the Pacific Northwest. The weather is just like summer. Well, let's have Guy Ticker give you the news, and then we got a great show here tonight. So here's Guy Ticker.
This is NDTR Breaking News. This is Guy Ticker in the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network newsroom. This just in. Claims coming out of Washington are raising eyebrows and sparking wild speculation across the globe. According to former Trump administration science advisor Michael Kratsios, the United States may now possess technology that can manipulate time and space. That's right, according to this report just in off the wire. Speaking at a high-level retreat in Austin, Texas, Kratsios stated that U.S. advancements can now annihilate distance and may even cause things to grow, hinting at revolutionary tools that go far beyond anything this reporter has seen before. But here's where it gets even stranger. Let me get to the next page. Online chatter suggests these technologies are being referred to by some as bent and bent time, and could possibly obliterate targets, bend reality, and alter the very flow of time. Are these rumors based in truth, or are they just the latest wave of high-tech conspiracies? We'll get to the bottom of it. Now, while Kratsios did not go into specifics, experts believe, and I have that right here, that he may have been referring to experimental programs in quantum computing, AI, and advanced military tech, projects that remain hidden from public view, of course. As of now, there's no official confirmation of these more extreme capabilities, but the silence from official channels is only fueling more questions. One thing is certain, at least in this reporter's eyes, something big is happening behind the scenes, whether it's scientific breakthrough or science fiction. We'll keep our eyes on it. You bet we will. This is Guy Ticker in the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network newsroom. We now return you to your regularly scheduled program. This has been Breaking News on the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. Stay tuned to your local station for further updates.
You're listening to my friend Gary Anderson on Night Dreams Talk Radio, the best in paranormal radio.
Well, thank you, John. Well, JC, would you want to go back in time? Do you believe what is coming out of, Washington, D.C.? We talked about it last week, but would you want to go back in time or forward in time, or do you believe we can even bend time?
Well, I think we've been messing with time for a while, but yeah, I'd go back to, maybe 1870s or maybe 1960s where I got some little bit of intel and make sure I take a lot of old money to put down some bets.
Well, yeah, I would like to. You know what I'd like to go back to is the 70s. Great music.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to go back to the 1800s. With your personality, you'd be walking down the street and somebody's going to pull their gun out and shoot you.
Oh, yeah. I'm not going to live long.
And you wouldn't want to have that type of blowjob, would you?
No, that's a one-of.
No, I wouldn't want to go back where they have, medieval times, where they can put you on the rack. Not to barbecue. You make like if you're 5'4" and they want to make you 6'4".
Yeah, and then they say, hey, we're going to quarter you, and that's not a good thing either.
No, the 70s is good. Yeah. Mid 70s would be really good. Well, tonight we got a great show. Let's find out a little bit of information about our guest.
Dr. Bruce Rapuano earned a BA degree from the University of Pennsylvania, where he majored in neurobiology and minored in psychology, a PhD in neuropharmacology from the University of Connecticut, and a JD from New York Law School. Dr. Rapuano has conducted independent biomedical research as a cell biologist at internationally recognized medical institutions, including the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center and the Hospital for Special Surgery, both located in New York City. He's authored or co-authored 30 scientific articles in peer-reviewed medical journals. He's published articles on topics such as the role of membrane phospholipids in nerve function, the skeletal effects of cancer metastasis, metabolic bone diseases, and the coordinate surface electrical and biological properties of titanium alloy implant materials. Dr. Rapuano has also worked concurrently as a medical research scientist and associate radiation safety officer at the Hospital for Special Surgery. Most interesting, however, may be his book, Dominion Lost, a scientist's own alien abduction. A bombshell nonfiction book, which is the only first-person account to date of UFO alien abductions authored by a mainstream American scientist.
Well, Bruce, my friend, how have you been? It's been a while since you've been on.
It's been a minute or two. I'm great, Gary.
You've been staying out of trouble? I mean, you're in the Big Apple. So, I mean...
Yes, I am.
Well, yeah, but, you know, a lot of things you can do in the Big Apple to get in trouble.
That's for sure. I try to stay out of it, though.
Well, that's a good move. You know, again, we've been hearing so little about disclosure lately because of other things that's going on with the tariffs and everything else. I mean, what's your feeling about, are we going to get real disclosure? Because we haven't got anything really.
I'm sorry to say, you asked me my opinion, but I'm sorry to say as each week, as each month goes by, as we talk more and more about disclosure, I'm getting less and less optimistic. The more I think about what they know and what we can speculate on and make an educated speculation on what the government knows, the more I feel it's too big a story, too wild a story for maybe the public to handle. And it can...
Okay,
promises notions of reality to such a severe degree, I'm getting more and more skeptical, Gary.
I'm really skeptical, but again, how naive is the public? When you want disclosure, let's go back to pre-biblical times. Even the biblical times. Let's go back even before that. When the hairy man, cavemen, were walking the earth in the caves, and the drawings in the caves where somebody was flying in some type of suit on some type of equipment. I mean, how would they ever comprehend and draw something like that unless they've seen it? I mean, we've had disclosure from the minute man started walking this planet.
And yet we're still in denial.
That's
And they actually have active programs to not only prevent disclosure, but to, for the past 50 years, to marginalize, even ridicule anyone who talks about the subject. And so it certainly seems, and we know, if those of us who study ufology know that it's a deliberate attempt, at least on the part of the American government, to prevent people like you and I from being taken seriously, let alone, allowing a government official or a military official to give any information about what they know, what the government knows. So like I say, I've got some hope, but it's been diminishing over the past few months.
Well, yeah, because they promised all these promises and none of it has really come true. I mean, they're not keeping us updated anymore.
Right.
We're talking about Ukraine. We're talking about the terrorists. We're talking about Washington, D.C. We're talking about, Social Security, but we're not talking about ufology much anymore. And, the thing is, there's even people coming out of the woodwork now, which is really more confusing, the whole subject.
Yes. There was talk before the election and shortly after the election that this particular administration would be, maybe one of the most, if not the most transparent regarding the subject of UFOs and UAPs. But it's the same old story where as soon as any president, any party gets briefed on what our military, what the Pentagon knows, especially with respect to all the myriad military applications of what they've learned about this phenomenon, that we can't divulge to our public because we'll end up divulging it to some of our adversaries. The impression I get from this administration is that, they're going to be very, very careful as any other previous administration, at not disclosing what could really compromise us in a military sense. If some adversary like Iran or North Korea is able to leverage this knowledge and use it against us at some point in the future. So,
But
it,
but here's another thing, Bruce, that has really slowed down is people coming out and saying that they were abducted. That has slowed down here lately.
well, yes, it's true. I don't see as many people coming forward and having press conferences or being asked to join press conferences. Even some of the scientific conferences that publicly state that they're open to every aspect of the phenomenon very rarely invite abductees, whether they have technical backgrounds like I do or the layperson, as it were. They don't seem to encourage people to come forward and tell their abduction accounts. And I've noticed there have been a few people that have published books, some quite compelling. I've interviewed a number of people in the family of Chris Bledsoe. I believe you also had Chris on your show. But though there's been some compelling stories that have been published, but beyond the publication of the book and those individuals, making the podcast circuit, it seems that almost no one in the mainstream media shows any interest. So let alone the government. So that, I think I share the discouragement, the tone of discouragement that I'm hearing from you. I have that as well.
Well, I just got an email, a letter from somebody a few days ago that, I've been getting a lot of emails from the listeners and telling me their stories, about, abductions or UFOs or whatever. This person was driving late at night from Moscow, Idaho. He was going to go to Spokane, where he worked. He found himself in Yakima. And he didn't even realize he was in Yakima he was there to make the turn to go into Yakima. And this person is a very professional person. And again, he had loss of time. And, that's a long distance between Yakima and Spokane, or Spokane to Yakima. That's a long drive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how somebody could drive and not realize they're driving it.
Right. Another example of missing time.
Possibility, right. I replied to him. I said, maybe you were abducted and then they put you back in the wrong area.
There's no doubt that it's still happening, and I think you were alluding to the fact that maybe the frequency of abductions seems to be down from what it might have been a decade or two ago.
But are they?
I'm still hearing from hearing accounts of people that have had abductions, when they were in their childhood or 20 or 30 years ago. But even from people in Generation Z, as I meet more people, as people contact me because I published the book The Dominion Lost, and I appear on other podcasts in this particular area, I'm finding out that people in their 20s and 30s are having very similar experiences to people of my generation. And there's not a lot of them, but I at least it lets me know that the phenomenon is still happening. But I have to agree, maybe not to the same degree that it happened, a generation or two ago.
But could it be?
That's certainly true.
But Bruce, could it still be happening as much as his people now are more scared to talk about it than they were in the past? Before the excuse is, well, people, would kind of think that you're weird. But with all the things going on, maybe people don't want to, bring attention to themselves right now, because I hate to say it, if you bring attention to yourself, you could be deported out of this country.
I didn't think of that, Gary. But I know it's happening. I mean, I've had people, Generation X, Generation Z, when we shared stories, had the same things happen to them that happened to me. That aspects of the abduction phenomenon, what I call the core abduction scenario, where there's unexplained bleeding or strange implants that have been reported, now for 50 years or more. I meet young people that just report to me remarkable similarity to what I've experienced. to the point where the two of us have to shake our heads and say, you know, I'm not as shocked, but the younger person's usually shocked to say, wow, I mean, that happened to someone else other than me? I said, yes, it's happened to thousands of people. And you know, but you know, your point, I'm sorry to say, maybe a valid one, that maybe they're, you know, more afraid than ever to come forward and say something strange or controversial about what they experience.
Well, they could be deported
sad
to
but true.
They could Mars or Venus or Saturn. They could be deported to. That's the safe way to say it.
Oh gosh!
But if you really think about it, I mean, people are like I said, you know, we were having a big movement on ufology, you know, and now, like, with everything that's going on, it's not as much. Even if you go on X or you go on a lot of these platforms, the regulars are still posting, but you're not seeing many other people. And, you know, again, just think about it. I have a friend who has friends who claim that they were abducted, implanted, or, you know, that they might not even be humans. I mean, and I don't just hear that from one person. I hear it from a lot of people that, you know, through their lives, they've noticed some strange things going on.
Yeah, I guess they don't believe it because no one, no one in the media, no one in our government, although they'll talk about the subject of UFOs and UAPs, no one at every level, from the government to the media, I won't say that about, you know, certain areas of the media, but for the mainstream media, very few elements want to touch the subject of alien abduction even today. You know, I thought that might change, but I know the fact that I published a book not about UFO close encounters, but about close encounters as well as alien abductions, means I'm not going to be sought out by a lot of many elements of the mainstream media, because they still don't take it seriously. And as you and I know, this can be potentially for the human race a fatal mistake not to take this particular subject seriously. I'm afraid that happens far too often.
I really think it does. Would you like to, you know, again, we got more listeners and different listeners all over the world, by the way, than we had the last time you were on. Can you explain what happened to you?
Well, I had a number of, as I said before, episodes where I had close encounters with a UFO and experiences meeting strange, short, humanoid beings that look like the classic gray aliens, 3.5 to 4 foot tall, disproportionately large heads. They were actually white in color, and I saw them a number of times throughout my life. Like the great majority of abductees, the first experience I can recall happened at the age of 6 years old, where I'm in bed, it's the summertime, I'm nodding off to sleep. I see a strange-looking airplane outside my window. I thought, I've never seen an airplane like this before. And I strangely fall asleep, and I wake up, and I'm bored. I'm not in my room anymore. I'm on board a UFO, surrounded by dozens of these, like I say, bald, 3.5 to 4 foot tall humanoids, and lying on a table, the classic abduction scenario where the abductee is on a table in a room that's very much like some human clinical environment. I thought I was in a hospital. And, you know, I've had other close encounters where there were multiple witnesses to a UFO that was within 500 feet of us, that was so bright it was almost hard to look at, and in fact was 2.5 to 3 times as large as the full moon. And this was when I was 10 years old, and there were very strange aspects to this particular episode, where everything got quiet. This is very characteristic of UFO close encounters. They call it the Oz syndrome. I couldn't hear the animals anymore, the crickets, the grasshoppers, and a number of things happened that caused me not to see what others had seen. After the UFO had left and we kind of, shared details of what we had witnessed. Clearly, I hadn't seen a number of features of the UFO, and someone had reported that I was missing from the scene for a period of time. This, again, was another of my, not only a UFO close encounter, but another of my abduction experiences. And I've had a number of other experiences where, again, I have missing time, and whatever I can recall, it's always meeting or having experiences with the same type of alien being, same stature, same frame, that we now know as the classic gray alien.
What do you think they're doing? I mean, again, if we go back in time, how many people do they need to keep abducting? It can't be just for DNA, unless they're trying to alter our DNA of humans on this planet. What do you think is going on?
Well, what you just said, Gary, touches on the only theory at this point that makes sense to me. And if we're talking thousands, and some UFO investigators, some of the most respected abduction investigators, think this could involve millions of people. The only thing that makes sense to me is that since there is so much evidence that there is some type of a genetic program where a hybrid species, alien-human hybrid species, I call it a transgenics, because what they're doing is introducing novel genes or alien genes into the human genome, and they're doing this for thousands or millions of people because they want to increase the frequency of these genes in the Homo sapien population for some unknown reason. For all we know, and I'm not the first to say this, and I won't be the last, this is part of a process that has been ongoing in our species, not for thousands, but for millions of years. It's possible that human beings arose from these types of genetic experiments that were done by some advanced civilization that's come to the Earth, and our stock or genetic stock is continuing to be upgraded by the same species or different species, even till today. For what purpose? I can only speculate. We can only speculate.
But, again, I was reading a science journal a couple of years ago, that men being able to cause pregnancy is going down. That at this rate, in the next couple hundred years, it's going to be, if you're a female want to have a baby, it might be really hard. But you might have to go through a gene pool to be able to find somebody to, and what is going on with that? Could that be some of the manipulation that they might be doing too?
Possibly. Maybe they're trying to create an altered human genome, a new race to replace the rest of humanity. And it would be advantageous in terms of their purposes if they could increase the number of human beings that have these novel or alien genes in their genome, and
well, I'm thinking
to replace the rest of us that don't have the don't have the gene.
I was thinking maybe the ones that do have the alien DNA, they will be able to take over eventually, where the non-alien DNA will not be able to.
Right. And if perhaps in the latter group, their numbers are dwindling, and ultimately the population will shift for a number of reasons. Now, the other possibility is that, if if the rest of humanity who are not abducted are not expendable, which there's not much evidence to support that's the view of the aliens. But in that case, then what the aliens probably would try to promote, or at least it would be in favor of, would be the breeding of the abductees, not the abductees, but the human alien hybrids with the rest of the population, so that these genes can spread throughout the entire human race. But as you said, this decrease in fertility, and especially in the part of the males of our species, would kind of work against that. So I can't really say what that's attributable to, whether that's just something that's related to our diet or whether that's the result of some conscious genetic manipulation by advanced ET civilization.
Well, I know
I'm not sure.
Our DNA is constantly changing, and that is very interesting too. Because I was reading the Science Journal here this last week that that the DNA has been making some major changes here in the last decade. So a lot of people don't even realize that. So it's being altered one way or the other.
Well, it happens slowly. It's for over many, many generations, thousands of generations, for the most advantageous traits to be selected for in a population. What the aliens are doing is, in the course of just several 4 or 5 generations, they're accelerating evolution, I believe, by, and we don't know what genes are involved, by these genetic manipulation experiments. So there's some view on the part of the aliens to accelerating human evolution for our benefit or for their benefit, which isn't. We really don't have any evidence, scientific at least, that would bear on that question.
Yeah, there's so much on this topic. We need to take a break, and we come back, Bruce. I have a lot of questions to ask you, and we might take 1 or 2 call-ins here later during the show. But first, we got some good music, so we'll be back with Bruce in about 3 minutes.
We've been together for a long, long time. Time goes by so fast. Baby, it ain't been long enough to forget how it began. When I saw you walking down my street, didn't even know your name, but I got a feeling inside of me, nothing's ever gonna be the same. Never gonna be the same. Minutes, hours, years and days, time goes by, but nothing's changed. I feel it that same way. 'Cause baby, I still love you like I used to, way back in the day.
Do you have a mother with a weird sense of humor? We have the perfect solution to your potential gift-giving conundrum. Buy for Mom this great read, The Expectant Mother Disinformation Handbook. It's the latest book by Robert Guffey, author of Chameleon. In the pages of the handbook, you will learn about the dangers of allowing your fetus an in utero internet connection, the growing problem of terrorism in the womb, and the little-known fact that Shakespeare created pregnancy, among other esoteric secrets. The Expectant Mother Disinformation Handbook is available directly from Madness Heart Press and Amazon.com. No infants were harmed in the making of this handbook. The Expectant Mother Disinformation Handbook by Robert Guffey. Order now. 2025, a year of false flags or impending contact. Do narratives hidden in the Bible and indigenous stories reveal what happened last time humanity was in contact with extraterrestrial intelligence? From international best-selling author Paul Wallace, The Eden Enigma and The Invasion of Eden. Archaeological sites, enigmatic carvings, and ancient texts reveal answers from the dawn of civilization. Harvard professor of astrophysics Avi Loeb says Paul Wallace provides a fascinating answer. Eric von Daniken says enlightening and persuasive. The Invasion of Eden and The Eden Enigma. Available now on Amazon. They are here. with the legendary Gary Anderson.
And we are back. Hey, Bruce. Yeah, a lot of things again going on with when you think about abductions. How about implants? Again, there's so many people that, go to the doctor, go to the hospital, and then some strange things appear in their MRI or X-rays.
I have to go back to the story I told you a few minutes ago because it really startles me. I had many years ago read Raymond Fowler's The Andreasen Affair, about the story of Betty Andreasen, who had so many abduction experiences. And I'll never forget how the implant she described, placed in her nasal cavity by a humanoid that was very similar to, in appearance, to the Greys. And I remember since I was 6 years old, the same implant being in my nasal cavity, the fact that it was spherical, 2 to 3 millimeters in diameter. It had rough edges or projections on the surface. I remember this my entire life since then. And then to meet a Generation Z person or X and have him tell me that I couldn't sleep for a night or two after I read your book because I can remember the same implant. And just like myself, I can't, he confessed he has no idea where it came from. Now, in my case, I speculate that it must have something to do with my abduction experiences, but he doesn't have any consciously recalled abduction experiences, just symptoms of the core abduction scenario. So this is, as you said, quite common. Roughly 10% of abductees report having some type of implant, either behind the ear, inside the ear canal, underneath the eye, or in the nasal cavity. So this is, a relatively common aspect of abductions. In my book, I speculate on as to what the possible purpose of these implants might be, but really, we have little or no hard science on retrieved implants. A number of implants have been retrieved from abductees. Their radioisotope ratio has been studied, their metallic composition, but still there's been no scientific data that would allow the investigator to distinguish the implant from something that could have been could occur terrestrially or manufactured here on Earth. So no smoking gun yet with respect to these implants. There are one or two cases where the data is very suggestive that it's a manufactured device that has some functionality, like a wireless radio transmitter, but very few cases like that.
Well, when Whitley Strieber was on our show last, and by the way, he'll be on, I think, next Friday again. He is getting messages and like a text form from his implant. And for years he didn't understand how his implant was working, and it's only been the last couple years that he's actually kind of merging with the implant. And it's communicating with him and giving him information. And I'm just wondering, have you talked to other people that have had implants saying that they're getting information of all kinds of stuff?
That's a remarkable story from Whitley Strieber. I can't say that I have. I can't say that I've heard anyone claim that they have noticed any difference in their memory, cognitive abilities, IQ, or any other faculty that was, that they associate with having an implant. But it's remarkable the number of people that have found out through neuroimaging studies, through MRI or CT studies of the brain, and they've had the implant. The radiologist can't identify what the object is, and yet on a number of occasions the abductee, like Whitley, has decided they're going to live with it in no case whether they found it in their ear, behind their ear, but they would never consider having it removed unless it was very dangerous to their health, because they seem to have been made to understand, Gary, that it's having that implant serving a larger purpose. Now, of course, I always refer to this as potentially Stockholm syndrome, where the captive person is identifying with the motives of the abductor, and they've been convinced that by the maybe aliens that have abducted them that what they're doing is part of some grand plan that's going to benefit humanity. As I say, I'm always going to be skeptical about that. But briefly, I just want to say that I've done a lot of research, and there's a lot of material in my book, Dominion Lost, about the potential for these implants to function as some type of brain-computer interface that can accept information transmitted remotely from an alien AI computer for whatever purpose, to educate, to give humans more knowledge, or to looking at the other side of the coin, to control humans by controlling the brain.
Well, maybe they're doing a trial right now for and again, right. What is time? An hour on our planet could be who knows on another planet. So the prospect of time, we have to rule that out. But again, maybe we're subjects right now, test subjects for maybe later on. How about mind control or something in that nature?
Yes.
Again, so many people I've interviewed, they say the same thing. Oh, aliens, they abducted me. They took me on board of a craft. They prodded me. They stuck things into me. They opened me up. They examined me. And then after they were all done, they gave me a tour of the craft and said, you got to tell everybody on your planet that if you don't make these changes, you're not going to be around. But yet, they like, now we're buddy-buddy after they kidnapped you, tortured you, and put you for all that, and who knows if they were implanted on top of it.
I don't subscribe to the theory that these implants are part of the program, our program of accelerated evolution. In other words, it's being done for our benefit so that we can be, we can be incorporated into the cosmic community and be more welcome there, and be able to interact more effectively with more advanced civilizations. I talk a lot about the potential in the hands of human scientists as well as ETs for these types of devices, these in theory, brain-computer interfaces, potential for, just as you say, mind control, to be able to make human beings loyal subjects of some advanced civilization and do their bidding, and perhaps be part of some plan for altering the course of human events. Perhaps, you alluded to the fact that there have been communications to abductees that human beings aren't good stewards of the planet. We're not taking care of the planet. And, these visiting ETs from some distant galaxy may have a stake in the planet, our natural resources, and they have to get handle on the dominant species that may not be taking good care of those natural resources that they need. And they may have to exert more and more control over human beings in order to protect the stake they have on our planet.
Yeah, you never know. It could be going on in Washington, D.C. right now, believe it or not. Anyway, we got a caller. Who do we have?
This is Tom.
Hi, Tom. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. My question for your guest is, I have read, and I would like to know if you can corroborate this one way or the other, that ever since Kennedy, when a president is elected and he is briefed by the CIA and other entities, that they are told in no uncertain terms that they are not, they are briefed, but they are told not to discuss the disclosure issue because it would impact national security in a major way. And they're told very strongly not to do that. And I was just wondering what his take on that is.
Okay, Tom, he'll tell you on air.
I definitely think that every president since Harry Truman has been briefed and has essentially been told that as far back as 1947, the U.S. military was aware of very, very important military applications for the technology that's associated with the crash UFOs. And I think very soon after Roswell, if you follow the work of the late Lieutenant Colonel Philip Corso, many components of UFOs have been farmed out to various universities, private companies for reverse engineering. And I think it's probably the most compelling reason, even today, for any administration, for any president, to be very circumspect about what he would consider divulging to the public, because, I think these technologies are such breakthrough technologies, could not only radically transform the way we use energy or provide us with limitless amounts of energy, but they also can be used to generate weapons that we cannot even imagine even today. And to have those fall into the hands of some rogue state could lead to the end of humanity. So to me, I believe that's the most compelling reason against disclosure by any executive administration, at least in America.
Well, I also feel that if they came out and told us the truth tomorrow, then everything they have ever told us on a lot of different subjects, we're not going to believe the government anymore, and the government's going to lose control.
Yes.
Okay,
absolutely.
we got another caller. Who do we have?
Hi, this is Barb.
Hi, Barb. How are you doing this Thursday night?
I'm doing all right. First, I want to thank the guest for coming on and let him know I really appreciate it. And I wanted to ask him, how did you find out you had an implant, and do you still have it?
It's a great question. It's great questions. I had a period in my life where I had my first conscious recollection of an abduction, and within days or weeks of that particular experience, I had a flashback where I could remember exactly the shape, the size, the structure of the implant, and not only that, but to have an emotional reaction associated with this particular memory. And that was based on the fact that I can remember being told, be careful, this implant can fall out of your nose. That's how I knew it was a nasal implant. If you sneeze too forcefully or blow your nose too hard. And, so that's how I was able to draw to connect the dots in terms of all the experiences I had that led me to believe that I not only was abducted, but I had a nasal implant. Very close to that period of time, I had an unexplained serious nosebleed, where I had a telepathic communication from, I believe it was one of the abductors, informing me to be careful, don't let anyone find out that you had this nosebleed. And I ran to the bathroom as if under command, washed off all the evidence just as my family was entering the apartment. And so I was able to remove the evidence so they didn't discover what had happened to me. And in telling the story, I think I need you to repeat your second question.
She's already off the line.
Okay.
Now, the thing when this happened, did you tell your parents or any, relatives afterwards or friends afterwards that you found this object in your nostril?
This has been a common common, result of all these experiences is that I don't feel as if I don't feel any urge to tell anyone, or it's almost as if I've had some post-hypnotic suggestion not to tell anyone. The feeling I get is it's if a parent or an authority figure has communicated to me, be very quiet about what happened to you. It's very analogous, Gary, to victims of sexual abuse who are kept from communicating anything of what happened to them to any adults.
Well, a lot of it because when you go like sexual abuse, it's because they feel ashamed. So they don't want to go and tell anybody, and it takes a lot to pull them out.
But
did you feel that way too?
Right. I find that in my situation, it's really a sense that feels something akin to a post-hypnotic suggestion. For some reason, I just feel no urge. I felt no urge as a child to tell anyone. I integrated it. I found some way to integrate it into my life at that young age by convincing myself that I'd had surgery in a very strange hospital to remedy these very painful ear infections I had again at the age of 6 years old. But why I never discussed that with my parents, I can't really explain. As I've tried to give explanation. I only mentioned it to one person in my life, and that was to my surgeon. At the time I was about to go under anesthesia, I asked my ear, nose, and throat surgeon. I was having my tonsils and adenoids removed. I said, "Doctor, can you tell me something? Why did I have to have 2 surgical procedures?" And he looked at me as if I had 2 heads. He never answered me. He looked so startled. I'll never forget the look on his face, because I thought the abduction event and my experience on board the UFO, surrounded by dozens of these alien beings, was in a hospital, and I had had some type of procedure done, as I said, for the purpose of treating my ear infections. So other than my ear, nose, and throat surgeon, I'd never mentioned anything to anyone about what had happened to me at that period in my life.
Yeah, it would be really hard to communicate what happened to you too, because they're going to think a kid that age has a really great imagination. Don't forget, I don't know your age, but even if you were born in the 60s, what we saw on TV growing up was what? Lost in Space, Star Trek, all kinds of B movies from the 50s and early 60s. So, I mean, there's a lot of contamination that people go through. And, if you started saying, well, hey, I was maybe abducted or they did this, they're going to just, okay, this kid has a vivid imagination.
Right.
Now, is there certain individuals out there are more targeted for repeated abductions than other people?
So let me see if I understand your question. Are you asking the question whether particular abductees are subject to more experiments?
Yes,
they're abducted more often.
Some abductees seem to be abducted more often than others.
Right.
Repeatedly.
And, I can only speculate. I know there's a lot of evidence that the ETs involved seem to show a lot of interest in specific certain bloodlines. You'll find that, and abduction research has shown this, it's very likely if you've abducted that your children or your parents will have, they won't associate with an alien abduction, but will have had very similar experiences. Now, it's possible that for the purposes of their genetic experiments, they need to find using human beings as the background strain. If they're trying to do some type of genetic manipulation, they need a certain genetic makeup, a certain genome to use as subjects, and some individuals may not fit the genetic profile for whatever reason for the types of experiments they're doing. in human research, we use, for preparing genetically altered mice or rats, we always work with the same background strain with the same
but
range of genetic traits.
I don't want to scare anybody.
Scientific reasons for this.
I don't want to scare anybody, Bruce, but what do we do with those mice, rabbits, and other monkeys and dogs and cats? What do we do when we're done with that? What do we dispose of them, don't we?
Well, we don't. We think of them as a much lower species than our species, and we dispose of them. And this conversation has come up before, but it's my hope that we are seen as one of the intelligent, technologically capable species of our part of the universe, and therefore, we might be treated a little bit differently than that.
But here's the thing.
That's my only hope.
I've heard from so many people through the years that claim that when they were abducted, taken aboard a craft, they either heard other people screaming in pain, they seen like tubes with, human-like bodies in them, and also they've seen, I've heard it from numerous people through the years, body parts. And they seem like they like younger people too, for body parts. So, I mean, is all this possible? Because people are looking at these, there's only one species or one type of, humanoid that's coming to this planet. It's just grays, but I don't believe the ones that look like dinosaur part. Or insects. I don't buy those. But again, we could be being visited by others that have other motives.
I have to get to the basic part of this alien abduction story, which is that many UFO investigators have talked about the agreement that President Eisenhower was supposed to make with the aliens, that we would allow them to abduct and experiment on human beings in return for technology. And the story of what supposedly happened in the deep underground military base in Dolce, New Mexico, where the aliens are supposed to not harm human beings as part of this agreement, just conduct experiments, return them unharmed to their homes. But the military found out that wasn't happening. That in fact they were doing things like you were alluding to a minute ago, and there was a conflict and engagement between the aliens and some special forces soldiers that did not end well for the special forces soldiers. So there's a number of stories and a number of accounts that would tend to support the contention that at least one or more, as you say, there may be multiple civilizations conducting experiments on human beings, but there's at least one or two of them that, in terms of the way they're treating human beings, their intentions can only be viewed as hostile. If that's how they treat human beings, what would be the next step?
Well, look at this. You were a young kid, 6 years old when this happened to you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just think about what would happen if somebody came in your house and took a 6-year-old away and did whatever they did to you. They would be locked up for the rest of their life. That would be the end of it. And these, they don't care how old you are. They don't care if you're a baby. They don't care if you're a 6-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 70-year-old. They don't care. They don't care if you're male or female. If they're going to take you for whatever they're doing, and you're marked to be one of them, and you're marked. I really think that the people who are being abducted, it's a tree. It goes into where a family has had repeatedly abductions going back, and who knows how long. Because like a lot of people, like you and a lot of people, they don't go out and say to their wife, when I was 6 years old, I was abducted. Or you go up to one of your employees, or one of your coworkers and say, when I was 6 years old, I was abducted and taken on a spacecraft, and they did. You know what? You wouldn't be having that job very long, and you wouldn't have friends very long, and you might not be married very long.
Agreed. I don't know if I've ever told you the story about my grandfather.
Well, we got to jump in here. Can you Can you hang in for another 15 minutes?
I certainly can.
Okay, go ahead.
This story is that my grandfather, at the age of 42, had a nasal infection. He had a blood clot and a blood sinus behind the nasal cavity called cerebral venous thrombosis. Chances of that are 1 in 10 million of that happening in 1932. However, that infection arises in an air sinus called the sphenoid sinus, again behind the nasal cavity. And guess what? That's the exact sinus that's used for an avenue of surgical approach by human neurosurgeons to take out pituitary tumors. So in that case, that particular procedure for removing pituitary tumor causes this cerebral venous thrombosis at a much higher incidence. In fact, 1 out of every 100, or 5 out of every 100 surgeries lead to this particular type of infection. So that leads me to speculate that my grandfather had no dental procedures, no infections, no medical issues of any time before he developed this particular condition where the infection spread to the meninges of his brain, and that took his life, which, again, only happens 1 out of 10 million times. That instead, he might have had some type of surgical intervention, not by human doctors, but by alien doctors, that happened to go wrong, especially in the age where there were no antibiotics in 1932. So do I think there were many people that through, we call it iatrogenic effects, the effect of the scientist or surgeon, that have lost their lives in the midst of an abduction that we never hear about? I do, and I think one of them was my grandfather.
Well, yeah, again, anytime that you take a person and you abduct them and you even implant, the fear that person goes through, I mean, you think about it, a lot of people could succumb just from a heart issue, yes, or what have you. Now, I've heard from people, yes, that Timothy Collin, that the late Dr. Roger Lear removed an implant from him. And mm-hmm. I still have the image that Timothy sent me years ago. And it was analyzed. And yes, the compound was aluminum and some other compound. But mm-hmm. the structure could not be compounded on this planet. The acetate ratio, it could not have been formulated on this planet. In other words, the other metal they put with it would not bound to it.
In a similar vein, one of the most common finding with these implants is that they're aluminum. Most of the elemental composition is aluminum, but at such a high percentage, it could not be manufactured at that high percentage. In other words, no human manufacturing process could make that pure an amount of aluminum. And that's happened a number of times with a number of implants, clearly indicating the implant was manufactured, but not here on Earth. So what does that tell you? Somebody else made it.
Yeah. But the thing is, we got to figure out what it's being used for. Again, Whitley claims that he has been getting signals off of his implant, telecommunications, where they're actually sending him information off of it. And for years, he couldn't actually figure it out. And now he's slowly figuring out they're trying to communicate with him. But again, it's like if you try to communicate with a chimpanzee, the chimpanzee's only going to understand very little. So a human, if they're trying to, communicate with us in a level of, giving us information, especially digitally or however they're doing it, we're not going to digest it.
Or more than that, what if they're stimulating the brain in certain ways that foster more connections, that actually rewire the brain? So it's not simply a transfer of knowledge, but it's actually transforming the cognitive faculties of the brain. You could result in human beings having not just enhanced cognitive abilities, but novel abilities that no human beings have, extrasensory abilities, ability to read minds that, that really have nothing to do with information transfer, but actually have something to do with the innate functioning of the human brain. That's something that could be involved.
I think so, because if you
could be targeted by the implant.
Now, I'm not saying all psychics are real or mystics are real, but there is a certain percentage of them out there that seems to be able, and there's been tests done in a couple major colleges on it, where they're more perceptive to things. And maybe here's the problem, they probably never were checked for implants. I'm just wondering if some of these people that have these gifts and stuff like that, they should be actually checked to see if they've been implanted with an MRI or some type of thing.
Well, the MRI studies have shown, leaving aside the issue of the implants, that people who are very intuitive and abduction experiencers have changes in the wiring in a certain area of the brain, in the basal ganglia. So both sets of individuals have the same changes that are very rarely seen in other populations of human beings, suggesting that maybe this is something that was innate to those individuals, or maybe they've been modified some way. Their brains have been modified by interacting with advanced alien beings, but that suggests that whether or not something is being done to alter the human genome, which alters the human brain, whether that's done for our benefit or whether that's done to facilitate our interactions, our communications, using the normal senses or in an extrasensory manner. That certainly seems that there is now, from the neuroimaging studies, some real hard scientific data indicating that the brains of abduction experiences are different. And
their
those
brainwaves
continue to go on.
Their brainwaves have been altered. I read that. Now, here's the thing I've said so many times also on this show is, there's reporting centers. You got MUFON. You got this. You got this. You got, the government, now where you can actually, report a UFO or whatever. But there's nothing. Here's the point. There's been thousands and thousands of people who have claimed that they've been abducted. It has destroyed their lives. Where they go to bed at night, they're terrified, male or female. They go to bed at night and they're wondered, am I going to be abducted while I'm sleeping? Am I going to be taken again? And they have to live with that the whole rest of their life. There's nobody they can turn to. There's nobody they can go get really help, is there? No government agency I know, hey, 100 UFO help. I mean, there's nothing there. Abduction help. There's nothing there.
Well, I know people at MUFON that say that they specialize in dealing with the abduction cases. That's their area.
Yeah, but specializing.
Well, what have they done in the area you mentioned in terms of providing some type of outreach to these people, and not just studying them as a scientific subject worthy of investigation, but doing something much more humane than that. I don't see that, as you fail to observe that as well.
There's no help for these people. None.
Right.
And that destroys their life. I've talked to some of these people that have claimed that they've been implanted or abducted multiple times, and they're not just terrified against themselves. They're worried about if they have children, and if they have children, is their children being abducted? And just having to live with that thought is really scary. And if you go up to your doctor, and do you know what your doctor is going to do? They're going to hand you a bottle or a prescription for a bottle of medication. Hey, you got schizophrenic. You got this, you got that. You need this. They don't take it as real.
They're never going to be believed, even today. It takes a rare individual like Dr. John Mack the Harvard psychiatrist, but who was, one of the leading UFO abduction investigators. But that type of individuals is very, very rare. And, I have to tell you that I have made other scientists aware of my experiences and expressed an interest in collaborating with groups, with this particular group of scientists, and they turned a cold shoulder to me. As soon as they found out of my experiences, and they probably were interested initially because of my scientific background. Still, as soon as you mention the word abductee, then the interest is eliminated.
Well,
the interest is no longer there. They don't want to have anything to do with it.
They don't. A lot of people I know lost their jobs because they told their coworkers, "I think I was abducted," and it got back to their boss, and the boss goes, "Well, we've got to find a way to get rid of them." I mean, it's one thing to say, well, I saw a UFO. Okay, that's cool. But, again, we are naive as a society not to believe that people are being abducted. Now, there's a certain group of people out there, they want their 1 minute of fame. So they're going to make up stories. I had one on a couple years ago that had a book that was being produced by a major book publishing company, and the publisher was listening on. And I caught the lady in so many lies. The publisher got a hold of my producer, and they said we already produced the books. We're pulling them. They're not going to go out in circulation.
Wow.
But there's those type of people. But there's the other people like you, and I can name so many, like Timothy Collin, Terry Lovelace, and a whole bunch of people that I really believe their stories that something happened to them. And again, like I said, who you go to help.
Right.
Yeah, that's the whole thing is there's no place. You go to your doctor. Even I know one person, I can't mention their name, but a few years ago went to the doctor. The doctor removed the implant out of the patient. And then the patient, who's kind of famous in acting, said to the doctor, well, what is it? I don't know, but I'm going to send it to the lab. Now, he didn't have any medical issues to have that implant where it was at, but he called the doctor up a couple of weeks later and says, well, where's the results from you sending it to the lab? Well, let me call the lab because, we haven't heard back from it. It never got to the lab. The lab denies ever getting it. And it's not just from him. I've heard that from other people for the years, too. That they had implants. They went to the doctor, and then the doctor at that point, after they removed the implant, and they made some type of story up about their implant. They didn't want them as a patient anymore.
I've heard of missing fetus syndrome with the abduction researchers, but I've never heard of missing implant syndrome.
Oh yeah.
I wonder who's responsible for that.
Well, maybe, when they send it to the lab gets it and they go, oh my God. And, I'm sure they have some protocol on certain things. So who knows what happens?
There have to be a lot of very serious, significant applications of these implants. And as I say, I'm wondering about the discoveries we haven't heard about because people want to keep it secret. And I mentioned the wireless transmitter that they can see they think it's a wireless transmitter that they can see under an electron microscope that's attached to an alien implant. But what about all the other findings of functionalities, perhaps that are never divulged because of the fact that they want to keep this so that keep it secret so that the company or the company they're working with can be the first to reverse engineer it and make the big money.
I don't even know if it's that, but maybe again, too, who knows how many people have been implanted. But I really think that anybody who's been really, truly abducted and taken aboard and experimented on, I'm willing to bet they were implanted. I can't see that they were put back on the earth, not implanted.
My estimate, if there's 1 million people abducted, 100,000 of them, on average, probably have been implanted.
And that's the scary part. Again, for what reason? We do send, implant, animals, fish, all kinds of birds and all kinds of things to find out how they survive in their environment and what their life is basically like with radio and all that stuff. But this, again, we don't understand the technology, what they're actually looking for. Are they trying to put a map of human civilization together? Or are they trying to alter the human society? Or are they trying to alter it in a way to end the society over a period of time and change the society over to hybrids or something else?
I wish I could remember his name. Maybe you do. The director of the CIA under Richard Nixon was the one that wrote about use of cybernetic control of human beings for the purpose of, especially in young children, to stimulate or accelerate their intellectual development. Cybernetic control. In other words, sounds an awful lot like an implant to me. So if the CIA was drawing up plans, for these type of studies 50 years ago, can you imagine the capabilities that an alien civilization might have? The way I describe it in my book is they would have a technology that would allow them to play the human brain like a piano. If we can do, if Elon Musk can simulate a certain part of the brain so that, he can restore function in a quadriplegic or paraplegic, imagine what an advanced civilization could do with their brain-machine interfaces.
Well, think about Musk down the future, not just that. Could you imagine getting implanted with a chip? Do you know if you really, and this is going to get kind of like out there a little bit, but from the standpoint, they could actually control your thoughts in some ways.
They can control your thoughts. They can make you forget what they want you to forget. They can implant false memories. They can, with an implant, do what they were doing in the Matrix. They can create a virtual reality. You wouldn't have to be hooked up to a machine, but your entire experience can be manufactured, fabricated by the remote transmission of a signal from a remote AI to a little chip that's no more than 2 or 3 millimeters that's implanted somewhere in your brain or your nasal cavity.
Well, it's a good way.
I believe that will happen maybe in the next 25 to 50 years.
I think it's probably about 5 to 10 years out, seriously.
Maybe you're right.
And
you're right.
What I'm scared is going to be mind control, where they can actually control the society if under certain, thought, give the society certain thoughts and to control them. And that's the scary part. It's like some of those movies that were made, like oh God, I can't think of the name of it, but where they use mind control chips. And this movie was made like 25 years ago. Some of these people who wrote these scripts and stuff really could see for in the future.
Amazing visionaries. But the scary part is if it can be done and there's a military application for it, it's going to get done. It's going to get done here or one or two other countries in the world. It's like AI. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. We're going to have artificial general intelligence. We're going to have super AGI that's far superior to us, and I think we're going to have implants just like the ones you described.
And that's
in whose hands are they going to be? That
That's scary.
That's the question.
That's scary.
Yeah, it is.
That is.
And I write a lot about that in Dominion Lost, in terms of how that type of implant could work, what material, how it would work, what material it would use, what type of energy it would project into the brain, and it's a very unique type of research on how a potential alien implant could work inside the human brain.
Well, they could actually make everybody happy. To accept what's going on when it could be really bad, to control the society. Exactly. They accept what's going on. Hey, turn your best friend in. Do this, do that. You're doing it, and you have no control. But again, with these AI, I really think AI is going to be the downfall of man eventually. I really feel that. But with these alien implants and all this stuff, it's happening. I'm telling you, we're not being told the truth. And I don't think they're going to tell us the truth. And what's scary is, again, some of these people that have had, like Whitley or these other people I talk about, something is going on. They're trying, the ETs or whoever they are trying to communicate, but we're not intelligent enough yet, our brain, to decipher what they're trying to say.
They're programming us to believe we're here from Alpha Centauri. We're from Alpha Centauri, and we're here to help you. And that's what, as you say, many abductees believe. They're here to cure our diseases, to make us better than we were. Let's really carefully, very carefully examine the evidence of that. I know there have been a couple of books written about it by experiencers, but let's look closely at that. As I hate keep using the word skeptical, but I'm highly skeptical of that particular postulate.
Are you going to be writing another sequel to your book or anything?
I'm thinking about it. I have to find out the correct direction to go in terms of the type of research I want to do for the book, and what I think can make the best contribution at this time. Almost anything would be a contribution if it's done carefully enough and you have the right background, because we're certainly not going to get the information from the government.
Well, that's where I'm frustrated. I watched this circus. That's what it was to me. Congress was a circus on this UFO disclosure. Yes. There was nothing talked about, people being abducted and what they've gone through. And that, I think, should have been another thing. It was right, should have been equal to all these reports. Come on, people, we have proof that we've been visited before biblical times. What more proof you have? But, again, I've had people on my show, Bruce, that, when I talked about Roswell, you know what they say? That doesn't count. That happened back, in ancient history. What we're talking about today, 20 years from now, is ancient history. What more do you want for proof that we're being visited? The carvings on the walls, scriptures, you name it. We talk about this stuff. I mean, it's again, we are being visited. Our technology, what we had on this planet going back 1,000 years, 2,000, 5,000 years, we didn't have that technology to do that. We've had help. There's your proof right there.
But look at the missing piece of the puzzle that everyone is ignoring. I can't remember, maybe you do, whether Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna said they were going to interview experiencers, but if you want, you can acknowledge that we're not alone. But if you want to find out why they're here, talk to the experiencers. Talk to the people who have been abducted. They've had some extensive communications from the ETs who abducted them that might shed a lot of light on what their agenda is. Don't ignore them.
Yeah. Well, again, they always say if we don't change the way our planet is going, we're not going to be here. Well, we already know that, but there's some other motive behind this. It really is. Hey, Bruce, what is the name of the book? How can they find your book? And do you have any media where people can get a hold of you?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Dominion Lost. Actually, you can just search Bruce Edward Rapuano. But the book is available on Amazon. I have two books. I have both the same title, Dominion Lost, A Scientist's Own Alien Abduction Encounters. And the blue book you see on the bottom has a lot of scientific analysis of how I think the implants work, how the UFO gravity propulsion system works, and a lot of other very interesting scientific analysis. But for the for the reader who just wants to read about my UFO close encounter and abduction experiences, the top book does not have all those scientific studies, and that's why I have two different books for maybe two different types of interest in this UFO alien abduction phenomenon. They're both available on Amazon, Dominion lost, the scientists' own alien abduction encounters.
Well, Bruce, I want to thank you for coming back on, and maybe not so far distant. We'll get you back on and we can continue on.
Always a great conversation. I really enjoyed it, Gary. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, you have a great weekend that's coming up, will you?
You too, sir. Take care of yourself.
I'm trying. Well, JC, who's our guest tomorrow? What are we going to be talking about tomorrow on the show?
Well, wait for my little thing here. Mr. Paul Bartholomew is going to come on, and he's going to be talking about, well, he's a researcher and investigator, but he's going to be talking about Bigfoot, cryptids, UFOs, paranormal, you name it, Gary. It's all going on.
Well, it's going to be a good Friday night. Now, next week, depending if I have to go in and have surgery, which I'm hoping to bypass, who do we have on if I don't have the surgery?
Well, we'll have Whitley Strieber coming on next week. That's going to be exciting. He's always got some good stuff. And then Nelson Aspen's going to be on talking about the spirits of kindred spirits of a Titanic tale.
The Titanic, the ship that went down, it was unsinkable, right?
That's the one.
Yeah. So we got 2 great shows lined up next week. Again, make sure you subscribe to our channel for more information about our guests tonight and tomorrow's guests. Go to our website at nightdreamstalkradio.com. We got a lot of information there. And a lot of people say, hey, how do I find you? Well, you can even go to our website and you can listen to the repeat of the show audio-wise, or you can go when we're live. You can just go right on the website and click. It'll take you right to YouTube. Again, make sure you give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell. Well, till tomorrow, everybody have a good one. And I'll tell you what, I really enjoyed the show here tonight. Everybody have a good one. We'll catch you on the other side, wherever that is.
Who's friends with all the night dreamers talking to you at night? Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not inside. Bigfoot's on his tail, flying UFOs, that's right. Gary's Talk Show Radio, Wednesday,